And now from deer chasing to cleaning poop. Yes, the mighty Hercules, son of Zeus, legend of muscle, reduced to janitorial duty. And not just any stables, but one so filthy you could smell them from Mount Olympus. Son of Zeus, breaker of monsters, is now assigned to clean up 30 years' worth of cow poop. Heroism, apparently, has many forms. This is the one where Hercules, the strongest man alive, ends up cleaning for 2 entire herds with his bare hands, or at least that's what Eurystheus thought would happen. Instead, Hercules pulled one of his slyest tricks and, as usual, left everyone else confused and irritated. So, after wrestling a lion, chopping up a swamp serpent, and running after a golden deer for a year, Hercules was probably ready for something different. And Eurystheus, ever the genius at mixing cruelty with comedy, decided it was time to humiliate his mighty cousin in a way that stripped all glamour from the word hero. Forget monster slaying, forget sacred deer. This time, Hercules would be asked to take out the trash. The assignment, clean the Augean stables. Sounds innocent enough. But of course, there was a twist. The stables belonged to King Augeas of Elis, a man famous for 2 things: wealth and livestock. Lots and lots of livestock. Some myths say he had 3,000 cattle, others claim thousands upon thousands more. However many it really was a staggering number. And those cattle had been standing around, eating, chewing, and, well, producing waste for decades. The stables hadn't been cleaned in over 30 years. Imagine the smell, imagine the size of the piles. The Augean stables were less a barn and more a mountain range of manure, truly a royal mess. Now Eurystheus thought this was perfect. The task sounded trivial, even laughable, compared to lion slaying or Hydra chopping. But it was also impossible, because how do you clean decades of accumulated dung in a single day? By hand. Even Hercules' muscles had limits. Eurystheus pictured him knee-deep in filth, slipping around, exhausted, humiliated, smelling worse than any swamp monster. That was the plan. But Hercules for once saw through the joke. He accepted the task with a straight face, then made his way to Elis, where King Augeas ruled. And when he arrived, he didn't just march straight into the stables. No, Hercules was smarter than that. He went to Augeas himself, smiled politely, and proposed a deal. "If I clean your stables in one day," he said, "will you give me 1/10 of your cattle as payment?" Augeas, hearing this, burst out laughing, because it was absurd. Nobody could clean those stables in a day. It was like asking if someone could drink the entire ocean before lunchtime. So he agreed, thinking he had nothing to lose. He even called in his son as a witness to this little bet, just so there'd be no dispute later. And then Hercules got to work. But not in the way everyone expected. He didn't roll up his sleeves, grab a shovel, and start scooping. No. Hercules was not about to waste his time that way. Instead, he walked out to the nearby rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus, and decided to reroute nature itself. Using nothing but strength, determination, and a suspicious lack of respect for environmental boundaries, he smashed through banks, dug new channels, and diverted the course of the rivers straight through the stables. In a matter of hours, a roaring flood poured through Augeas's barns, washing away 30 years' worth of filth in one great tidal wave of cow waste. Problem solved. Fresh, clean stables. Job finished. And all without touching a shovel. It was brilliant, practical, and frankly, a little petty. Hercules had taken what was meant to be an impossible humiliation and turned it into a display of ingenuity. But as with all clever tricks in Greek myths, the fallout was immediate. When Hercules returned to Augeas to collect his promised payment, the king's laughter dried up fast. Augeas suddenly remembered he didn't like parting with his precious cattle. He declared that the deal was invalid. Hercules had cheated, he said. He hadn't cleaned the stables by hand, but by diverting rivers, which wasn't the spirit of the agreement. Augeas even went so far as to deny the promise altogether, despite his son's testimony. And this is where things got messy, politically messy, not just cow messy, because Hercules didn't take betrayal lightly. Depending on which version of the myth you prefer, Hercules either stormed off in fury and dealt with Augeas later, or he challenged him right then and there. Eventually, Hercules came back with an army and overthrew him, killing Augeas and giving Illis new rulers. So much for gratitude. It turns out that cheating a demigod who just did you the world's biggest favor is not a wise move. Meanwhile, back in Mycenae, Eurystheus was not impressed either. When Hercules returned with the story, Eurystheus claimed this labor didn't count. Why? Because Hercules had accepted payment for it. In Eurystheus's twisted logic, a labor only counted if Hercules suffered purely out of obedience. No pay, no reward. Which meant Hercules had just spent a day redirecting rivers and arguing with kings. For nothing. Labor rejected. Thanks for playing. The irony here is delicious. Hercules had just done something extraordinary, not by brute force, but by cleverness. He solved a problem that no one else could have managed, and in record time. And yet, neither the mortal king nor the petty overlord gave him any credit. Augeas cheated him, Eurystheus dismissed him, and Hercules was left muttering under his breath, smelling faintly of river water and cattle. But the stable's labor holds a strange kind of symbolic weight. It's one of the few moments in Hercules' life where he is not defined by violence. He doesn't kill the cattle, he doesn't smash the stables, he cleans, he restores, he takes filth and replaces it with freshness. It's almost a purification ritual, a cleansing of the land itself, which makes sense, given that his labors were, in part, a way of cleansing him from his earlier sins, the madness, the murder, the blood. There's something quietly poetic in Hercules bending rivers to wash away the waste of decades. Of course, the humor never fades, because at the end of the day, this is still the tale of the greatest hero in Greece, spending his time mucking out barns. Imagine the bards around the fire singing of Hercules, the lion slayer, the Hydra killer, and yes, the guy who unclogged the ancient Greek equivalent of a public restroom. It's gloriously absurd, and that's why it sticks. So Hercules moved on, still technically stuck at 4 labors, since Eurystheus had scratched this one off the official list. The scorekeeping was ridiculous, but it didn't matter. There were still plenty of ordeals ahead, some bloody, some humiliating, and some, like this one, both. Hercules trudged away from Elis, muttering, "No cattle richer, no credit earned," and undoubtedly thinking that the next task couldn't possibly be worse. But Eurystheus always had more tricks, and for the next labor he would return to the theme of dangerous creatures, because Greece was apparently crawling with them. No more rivers, no more barns. This time Hercules would be sent after a bird problem, a very sharp, metallic, unpleasant bird problem. But that's a story for the next night. For now, picture Hercules standing on the banks of the Alpheus, watching the diverted rivers settle back into place, the air strangely fresh around the stables, the cattle lowing happily, while he sighs at the absurdity of it all. 4 labors down, a rejection stamped over one of them, and a long, messy road still waiting.